I think I have to stop here because I didn't mute my budgies. Sorry to interrupt. Okay.
So, can I ask, yes, you're German and you work in education, yes?
Yes, yes, I am self-employed. So I focus on in-company training for more than 15 years now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
so I don't work in public education.
How many different sectors do you work with? So you work in companies. Would you work in the industrial sector, the financial sector? Which sectors would you work
Actually, there is no limit to the type of industry, because I'm based in the rural area, and the rural area is kind of a conglomerate of many different industries. And with regard to my professional background, so I did a commercial training in a brewery, actually, and I used to. Yes, Dortmund is famous for its, used to be famous for steel and beer. So that was a partnership that coexisted. And I used to work in the export department of this German beverage group. And for that reason, I do have kind of an industrial background. And you get in contact with many different types of industries in our area. Yes.
And I notice on your your LinkedIn page, you talk about inclusion as well. Would you like to mention a little bit about that?
Yes, inclusion is a very important topic in my business, because we do have a very diverse type of employees. So you know that in Germany we had many immigrants coming to Germany, and they kind of were integrated. And there has always been a tradition, especially in the rural area in North Rhine-Westphalia, of people coming from all over Europe to find jobs here in the coal mining or steel industry. And working together in coal mines was kind of based on mutual trust. And people didn't bother where you came from. But the idea was to work together to get the job done, to trust each other, because you trusted the other person with your lives.
Yeah.
Although definitely there were a lot of problems working.
There always are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but this is kind of the foundation of what I call the rural area, and this is how people in this area. We don't worry about a person's last names. This is the way it is, and we try to work together and to cooperate. And there have been many waves of people coming as kind of guest workers from Spain, from Greece, from Italy. And nowadays they're fully integrated, and there have been people from Turkey and other areas. And now, as I mentioned, in 2015, people from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And this, of course, put a lot of pressure on society. And I think we do have a big advantage here in our cities that we are more or less used to, and living in big cities, one big city next to the other. So the rural area is kind of a conglomerate of big cities. This helps people to kind of accept the way. So there are different suburbs. So inclusion means that based on this background, companies have a rather diverse type of employees.
So
and
employee-based,
into company training, people may have different L1s. So they may speak Greek at home, and they learn German through the educational system. So they're fully integrated. But being aware of this multilingual, multicultural background is a very important aspect for me as an in-company trainer.
So,
and to make them aware of this richness that they have.
As people come from Syria, from all over the world to these areas, do they have to learn German, and they're encouraged to learn English as well?
So you really have to differentiate at what age they have come. So you have to look at each person individually, and this is definitely the challenge of dealing with this situation. But the basic idea of our educational school system, of our educational system, certainly is that to look at the individual person and to find ways to support this person throughout the further development. And our school system here in North Rhine-Westphalia offers many advantages. If you look at it in comparison to those in Bavaria or Baden-Württemberg, it may not be in the top list with regard to the ranking, but from my point of view, you have the possibility to develop according to your own speed.
Yeah.
So that means we have different opportunities where you could re-enter, you could bypass, you could take the time you need, you could get the support you need, and then you could reach higher levels of education. And yes, and there's also doing your A-levels and going to university is not the only option that you have as a professional, because we have a well-developed, I think, unique system of dual education.
Yeah.
And this focus on vocational training starts very early. There is a lot of criticism concerning this idea of separating teenagers at the age of 10 based on their potential academic skills.
Yeah,
so,
if I can just explain that. Yeah. In Germany, you have, is it 3 different streams of education? The Hochschule,
yes.
the Realschule, and the Gymnasium.
Exactly.
And you're likely to get to university if you go to the Gymnasium, but you're less likely to go to university if you go to one of the other 2.
So nowadays, it is even possible to do a practical training, to do to become a master in this area, and then to get the entrance to go to a University of Applied Science, for example. So you have this possibility without doing your A-levels to enter the scientific world. And this is, I think, a big advantage. And I'm quite surprised that the OECD often criticized our system and wanted to increase our rate of A-levels and our rate of people really finishing university, because apparently it is not really necessary, because not everybody is supposed to go to university and to work in such a theoretical way. And for that reason, so diversity is possible.
Is the gymnasium system, what we might in England have called the grammar school system, is that very traditional education leading to a traditional university life, or is it more progressive these days?
So the point is that we have a federal educational system in Germany. So we have at the top level, there is the federal government, and then we have 16 federal states. And all the federal states have the authority to decide about their educational systems. This has pros and cons we won't discuss here. But the point is that in general, the grammar school is very performance oriented. You start learning English at primary school, you get the second foreign language at the age of 11, so in second year of grammar school, that could be Latin, French, or Spanish. And this really puts a lot of stress on different types of pupils. And we have some federal states, they kind of shortened the number of years you attend grammar school, but they adapted it, they changed it again, and this kind of put extra stress on the pupils still doing the A-levels at the moment. Those entering grammar school now at the age of 10 will have 9 years again.
Do you find, therefore, I'm not looking for statistics because I don't know how easy it would be to even find these statistics. But would you find that people with neurodiversity, such as dyslexia, would be less likely to be the high achievers in the current education system, whatever we class as a high achiever?
Yes,
right.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah,
definitely. Yes. So if you want your children to kind of develop in a broader way, so that means paying attention to any creative hobbies, to any music-oriented hobbies, to do sports, you should definitely not send your children to a grammar school. It's different now, but as they have 1 year more. But this is a decision that you have to take as parents, sometimes together with the teacher, sometimes parents alone are allowed to take the decision. But I have noticed a tendency among parents, high achiever parents, so having an academic background, maybe both parents, but that they decided in favor of their children, meaning that they wanted to offer them an extra year where they could develop their whole personality, pay attention to different types of hobbies. And this worked rather nicely because after finishing Realschule, they were able to go to a grammar school and do their A-levels anyway. So it was just kind of a bypass which enriched them and which didn't focus on their linguistic, cognitive, and mathematics. And the children have the feeling that other things are important too, and their confidence was boosted a lot.
Other things than what we in England jokingly call the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the point. And the vocational school, so the Realschule, they really try to link all the different subjects, and whatever they do in one subject, they cover in the other subjects too. And from the very beginning, there's a clear focus on this vocational track. But nonetheless, they also prepare you to go to grammar school afterwards, to do the 3 final years together with people who went the whole time, were the whole time at grammar school. And there are different types, which we call Berufskolleg. They are typical of North Rhine-Westphalia too. So there you pick a certain focus. So you can focus on pedagogy. That means it is similar. You have not this possibility to choose your different subjects that you normally have at grammar school, but you can, if you know for sure you want to become a doctor, you could go to this Berufskolleg, focus on this, get good grades, and go to university afterwards too.
Something I noticed about Germany when I lived there, and it was both, again, I mean, it's difficult to put a value on it because I can see the good points and the bad points of this. But a lot of people who went to university to take some kind of vocational course, even if it was a traditionally academic university. So you would go to university to become a personal assistant, or you would go to university to become a bank manager. Is that an accurate reflection of what university is in Germany?
I think many people do an apprenticeship first, a commercial apprenticeship, and then they add a bachelor or a master afterwards. And they could even keep working for the company and add the bachelor. So these systems exist as well. There are many opportunities. They have certain academies. So the banks have specific academies to train their future managers. So I think this is not what Germany looks like. So if people have a more practical approach, they may first take this and then go to university and maybe then back to start working and then again doing their masters afterwards. So it's a rather open system, and being a skilled person, having a certificate from the Chamber of Commerce or from the Chamber of Crafts has a rather high reputation here in Germany. And there are statistics telling you that if you just add up on the income that you may have as a skilled worker or as a master until you reach retirement age, may not differ that much if you kind of subtract all the money and all the time you have to invest during your studies before you really reach these area of incomes so that it will pay off.
Right. That's really interesting, actually, because you would expect that it would be some form of return on investment, but in actuality it's not necessarily for a profit. It's for the position, it's for the job, it's for the...
So that may be for the highest position. So if you really want a straight university...
You want to be Mr. Winterkorn or something, then
doctor at whatever level, and then you need all these credentials. But in the middle, there's a big area for people. A lot of variety is possible. Yes.
In your own context, you work a lot with communication and language. Do you notice that there is any level of dyslexia among the people you work with? And who would these people be typically?
Actually, I don't think in these categories.
Right.
I look at my learners as an individuum. I pay a lot of attention to my needs analysis. And when talking to them and learning about their educational background and I ask them how they prefer learning, what they do to learn some new skills. And when they start telling me about their hobbies and what they did at school, what they liked at school, this kind of gives me an idea concerning the preferred channels of perception that a learner may have. And some people say just from the very beginning, I'm not good at learning English, numbers are my business. And so they have kind of a blocked mindset.
Yeah, they begin with what they can't do.
Exactly. So I like this idea of having a half full glass, not looking at the deficits, but what is there, and what is there is okay, what is there is good and enough for the time being, but they want to improve. So having this mentality of a growth mindset. So I'm an athlete. I like doing sports, and I often have this comparison of people who play an instrument or who do sports. They are familiar with setting goals and investing in this to achieve a certain goal and to readapt these goals. And working in business English contexts means that people have very specific needs. So the job they have to perform on a daily basis tells them what they need. And then we can focus on these needs. And if you have a group of people, you have to find a compromise and to focus, set priorities.
Well, this is what's interesting. So as a teacher or a trainer or an instructor, your methodology, I suppose, is flexibility. You try to be responsive to the needs of your learners. At what size group does that start to become difficult?
I am in a very positive situation. That means my groups are hardly ever bigger than 10 people.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, and this is a very comfortable position. And I'm not, I do not have to pay attention to any curriculum.
Yeah.
So my setting is flexible, and I make use of this flexibility. And this is how I'm used to work. Yes.
And what's the feedback you get from your students? Do they compare what they do with you with their educational history and say, yes, it was hard then and it's, yeah.
Yes, especially if you are in with regard to in-company training, you can notice a certain trend. That means that being able to communicate in English internationally has reached every level of hierarchy. And that means students or learners who may have left school a long time ago, did their commercial apprenticeship, are very skillful employees. They are not used to learning at all. They may have learned only English, and that a long time ago, and that in a very traditional English as a foreign language, deficit-oriented, grammar-oriented way.
Yeah.
So whenever they have communication problems, exactly, they think it's because their pronunciation is not good enough, they don't know enough words, and their grammar is not correct enough. And this is what they would like to fix. And this is where I come in.
And how do they respond to your difference in teaching? Do they respond positively?
Yes, very positively. So that I can sense a feeling of relief. I can sense a feeling. First, they're skeptical. They think it cannot really be true. Can it be that easy? Yes. So it really is that a kind of indoctrination has taken place. The native speaker, the ideal world of a native speaker used to be our role model. And correct and being correct. I still remember when I was at my first international trade fair, meeting our Spanish clients and getting in contact with them. I was rearranging the sentences to have the perfect word order, the perfect vocabulary, and then I realized, okay, you missed the moment, it's over.
Yeah.
And I also remember when they stood too close, they came closer and closer, and I was kind of stepping backwards and thinking, my goodness, why is he standing that close to me? we only focused on these linguistic things. So the linguistic repertoire was the only thing that was we had to think about. And we never thought about communication styles. We never thought about intercultural awareness and thinking about the person I talk to as a unique person with different beliefs and whatever, and different preferences.
Well, this is it. Just to put what I'm about to say, the insult I'm going to hurl at you in context. I'm a complete Germanophile, and I have been for 20, 30 years. And yet, something that frustrates me about German learners is that typically, not always, but when you get middle-aged German learners, they tend to have this idea that there is some idea of perfection that they must be able to achieve. And that this idea of perfection, if you're not perfect, you're somehow wrong. And this, to me, has always struck me as a very dangerous notion in education. Is Germany changing in that respect? Or have I misinterpreted the German mindset about education?
I think it highly depends on your professional background too.
Right.
So the more focused people are on figures, on measurement, so going into this area of engineers, IT people, so the more they're focused on these analytical skills by their professional background, the more likely it is that the idea of being more flexible, more creative, and to put more emphasis on communication and setting up relationships may not be their main priority.
Well, this is interesting, because it seems to me from what you said earlier that those people who don't fit into a traditional academic background are more likely to go to something like a Realschule or something, and then go to a University of Applied Sciences and work their way into engineering. And these are more likely, therefore, to be perhaps dyslexic learners. And so is it the dyslexic learners who've been given this mindset that actually there is a perfect answer, and without that perfect answer, you've fallen short? Or am I just being a bit extreme when I interpret it like that?
Yeah, I think the point is that this awareness of your own dyslexic may not be there.
Yeah.
So it kind of started, there were hardly any tests 20, 30 years ago, and people kind of went unnoticed, and if they were happy, they kind of got through the school system and achieved a certificate. And and I think the flexibility of our educational system, especially of the professional system, supported them, so they could find their way. Yeah.
So you work in education, specifically language teaching, and in your context, you work in industry, and you also work in a fairly multicultural area, both geographically and economically. Would you say that there is a broad awareness of neurodiversity and a broad acceptance of neurodiversity?
I think there is an increasing awareness.
Yeah.
Yes. And there is an increasing acceptance, especially on behalf of the parents.
Yeah.
And of the teachers too. So this idea of, teachers are aware of this, and they pay attention, and they really, and if they notice something that is different from what they are used to, they tell the parents. And then there is a system where you could go to and where you could get support and advice, and there are test possibilities that you have. And they try to look at it from a more holistic point of view. So I'm really taking different perspectives, and then finding a system of support, either during the school time or additionally paid by the parents. So that again, depending on your income, you may have more possibilities to support your children. So there is a system in Germany that supports parents with a really low income, but those in between are left out, and that I think is a big disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. I mean, I can't speak for many countries, but it sounds exactly the same as England. The people on the lowest income, they struggle, but there is some state support. The people on
Yes,
the higher
exactly.
incomes, they're okay. It's those in the middle that don't get support and they struggle. So
exactly.
yeah.
And I'm very happy to notice that there is this change of mindset among parents, that they really agree to giving their children the time to develop as a whole person, and not really to put them under that much pressure. But that definitely depends. So there are still parents there pushing their children, starting with extra training during primary school, because especially in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, you need a special average of grades to really attend grammar school. And if the whole class gets this approval to go to grammar school, and you're just the only one of the whole neighborhood not being allowed to go to grammar school, this is definitely a loss of reputation for the whole family.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of these factors too.
And so there are certain states in Germany that are more flexible than other states in terms of education.
It's not so easy to think in these categories, but there may be a tendency. I don't know whether our neighborhood to the Netherlands has an impact on North Rhine-Westphalian policies. If you look at the current Corona crisis, so in Bavaria you had the strict lockdown. In North Rhine-Westphalia there was more flexibility. You can have whatever you think about it, but this kind of shows you a certain tendency.
Yeah. It shows the federal nature of Germany.
Exactly.
I'm going to sound like I'm pushing a political agenda here, and perhaps I am pushing a political agenda, so forgive me, but I just wonder whether the increasing pluralism of culture in Germany, the incoming of migrants and refugees and people from different countries and different cultures, whether this whether this compels the German educators to become more pluralistic in their own educating. So the more people you get from different cultures in Germany, the more flexible and pluralistic the system has to become. And therefore, the more accommodating it becomes for diversity.
So if you look, yeah, I think there again, it's not possible to look at Germany as a whole, because if you look at the map of Germany, you can definitely see that there are certain areas with a very high influx of immigrants. The traditionally highly populated areas, the big cities, the urban areas, and there are those rural areas where it may be a real challenge if you don't have the same background.
And in these rural areas, are schools funded exactly the same as they're funded in urban areas?
Generally speaking, yes, but as always, you need a network of people supporting all these services offers, and there have to be people with a mindset, welcoming and wanting to integrate people, and you cannot generalize. So wherever you go, you find people who are open-minded, and you find people who prefer being on their own and having no changes. Yeah, that's German nature. That's human nature, I think. Sorry,
not German nature.
No, that's human nature.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you, Katrin. I really appreciate this. That's actually is quite enlightening. The idea of the way that the education system functions and how that feeds into society and the economy in general is a really interesting thought. Is there anything you'd like to say? Is there one thing you would like to say about the direction you wish education could go in the future before we finish?
If I look at my own setting, so I think there is this clear movement towards a global English, or using English as a lingua franca, and this idea is so that means adopting an ELF-oriented mindset, to be flexible, to be aware, to be creative, to be a team player, and to celebrate diversity and to include anybody. And that means this discussion about accent, to be proud of your accent as part of your identity. Although this idea of speaking in an intelligible way is very important too, nonetheless, that depends on the attitude and the willingness of the listener as well. If he is not used to listening to unfamiliar accents,
Yeah.
And this refers to using German in daily life too. So if we listen to somebody with an L1 different from my L1, I may not be familiar with his way of speaking German. And this openness and this willingness to get used to this diversity of different accents. And yes, and if you look at the current discussions about skin color and so all these aspects, so what to add to the map of inclusion? So what is important apart from gender and race and religion and all these topics that we have there? I would like to add the idea of accent and to celebrate the idea of different accents and to move away from this very idealistic idea of a native speaker role model to achieve this perfection. So I think it's more important to invest in relationships, in people's skills, and to set up a network, to work in communities of practice, to have a shared goal, a mutual engagement, to reach something for the whole group. And this is something that could work in any area. And so this is a concept behind this idea of English as a lingua franca that I would, that I think is very helpful and I would like to advocate for.